So previously we've looked at the burnt offering, and we followed that up with the cereal offering, as well as taking a little bit of a gander at the first fruit topic. Now we're going to be looking at the peace offering. Leviticus 3:1. If a man's offering is a sacrifice of peace offering, if he offers an animal from the herd, whether male or female, he shall offer it without blemish before the Lord. There are certain lines in the Bible that are repeated often, and this whole idea of a sacrifice being unblemished is one that I've seen quite a few times. And even just getting to here, we're just starting Leviticus, and we've seen it several times already, and we're going to see it quite a few more as we make our way through the Old and the New Testament. This is a very important thing. The unblemished animal is one that is not sickly, it's not dying, doesn't have broken bones, doesn't have weird skin spots on it, that it is in perfect condition. Some of the blemishes can affect the utility value of an animal. Let's take the ox, the castrated male cow that pulls the plow or pulls the cart, can be loaded up with weight. Now, let's say it has some sort of condition with it and it just isn't as strong, not as capable. Same could be said for a donkey, that maybe it has some sort of blemish that makes it impossible to ride or carry goods, and the value of an animal that has lost its utility value is essentially worthless or significantly lower, and that's simply looking at the earthly value of a given animal. You could certainly see why there would be a desire to sacrifice these animals that have these blemishes, and if given the opportunity, I'm sure most people would rather give away that which is sick and unhealthy than that which is in perfect running order or perfect condition. A lot of this is setting up trends that we see in the New Testament, where Jesus, he had to be in good health, in good mental standing, and in whole body with no broken bones in order to be the sacrifice to end all sacrifices. And when he interacted with other people, he interacted with people that had blemishes, that were not in good health. He cured the sick. He healed the blind. He did all kinds of wonders to improve the lives of those with blemishes. Leviticus 3:2. He shall lay both his hands upon the head of his offering, and kill it at the door of the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons, the priests, shall throw the blood against the altar round about. 3:3. And from the sacrifice of the peace offering, an offering made by fire to the Lord, he shall offer the fat that covers and is upon the entrails. 3:4. And the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them at the loins, and the appendage of the liver, which he shall take away from the kidneys. 3:5. Aaron's sons shall burn it all on the altar upon the burnt offering, which is on the wood on the fire, an offering made by fire of a sweet and satisfying odor to the Lord. At first glance, this looks very similar to what we saw previously in the first chapter of Leviticus when we were looking at the sin offering, the burnt offering, but there are some key differences between the two. When it came to the burnt offering, the offering that was to cover the sin, the entire animal is destroyed by the fire, and it is burnt till there is nothing remaining, charred into annihilation. No portion of the animal was available for the consumption of the priest. This peace offering is different. We see that the fat is separated and the entrails, as well as the kidneys and the fat, and there's a specific portion of the animal that is going to be consumed by the fire, but it is not entirely consumed by it. There is a difference in the method in which the offering is made, but the greater difference is likely in the purpose of the specific offering. The burnt offering, the sin offering, was a method in which the sin would be hidden from the Lord by having the animal take the place of the person who committed the sin. It was a way of allowing the Israelites to have fellowship with God even in their fallen state, and it was only a temporary measure, as there needed to be a reoccurring event of a sin offering to maintain that state of communion with the Lord. The peace offering, the offering that we're looking in this chapter, is quite a bit different. There are three main types of the peace offering. The first is the free will offering, and this is an offering to give thanks to the Lord. Not something that he has commanded, but something that is given willingly. The second type of peace offering relates to a vow. When a vow is made, then in the fulfillment of the vow, a peace offering is given. We're going to see more on this type later on. The third type is in deliverance, when delivered from a very difficult situation by the hand of God, giving thanks to him for his deliverance. Leviticus 3 and 6. If his peace offering to the Lord is an animal from the flock, male or female, he shall offer it without blemish. 3 and 7. If he offers a lamb, then he shall offer it before the Lord. 3 and 8. He shall lay both his hands on the head of his offering and kill it before the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons shall throw its blood against the altar. We have several different animals mentioned here. There's several different types that can be used for this peace offering. And this is a way for God to have a relationship with people that can't necessarily afford these more expensive animals, but still want to have a good relationship with the Lord, and to give the Lord thanks for whatever the event was that has led them to have this desire to make this offering. Leviticus 3 and 9. And he shall offer from the peace offering, as an offering made by fire to the Lord, the fat of it, the fat tail as a whole, taking it off close to the backbone, and the fat that covers and is upon the entrails. 3 and 10. And the 2 kidneys, and the fat on them at the loins, and the appendage of the liver, which he shall take away with the kidneys. 3 and 11. The priest shall burn it upon the altar as a food offering made by fire to the Lord. 3 and 12. If a man's offering is a goat, he shall offer it before the Lord. 3 and 13. And lay his hands upon its head, and kill it before the tent of meeting, and the sons of Aaron shall throw its blood against the altar round about. 3 and 14. Then he shall offer from it as his offering made by fire to the Lord, the fat that covers and is on the entrails. 3 and 15. And the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is on them at the loins, and the appendage of the liver, which he shall take away with the kidneys. 3 and 16. The priest shall burn them on the altar as food offered by fire, for a sweet satisfying fragrance. All the fat is the Lord's. So it looks like there's several different types of animals that can be used for this type of offering, and the method in which they were prepared to me seemed very similar one to another. The big difference I saw was the one with the tail being used, and tail meat is generally incredibly fatty, and we saw that the fat was the Lord's, so that makes sense that would be the case. Leviticus 3 and 17. It shall be a perpetual statute for your generations in all your dwelling places, that you eat neither fat nor blood. Well, this is certainly an interesting verse. We have the forbidding of the consumption of blood and fat, to the Israelites. And this is not just for here and now, this is a forever statute, so for all the generations to come. The consumption is not simply limited to these sacrifices or offerings made to the Lord or anything like that. This is much more encompassing in that the Israelites are forbidden from eating the fat and the blood from anything and everything outside of the sacrifices. This is regulation outside of the sacrifice. I mean, it also encompasses the sacrifice, but it does encompass much more than what we were previously reading about in this chapter. Some of this could be as a reference type prohibition, in that these items are used in these sacrifices, are used in these offerings. To have the consumption of them outside of the offerings would be kind of weird, and it would kind of detract from the offerings themselves. So maybe there's some sort of element to that as to why it is forbidden, but there's probably more to it than that. There are a lot of verses about the drinking of blood in Genesis 9, where Noah is getting off the ark after the flood. They're allowed to eat all the animals, but they're forbidden from having the blood with the animals. So the idea would be to kill the animal, drain the blood, and then you can eat it, type of thing. For life is in the blood. There's some interesting conspiracy stuff as far as like the consumption of blood goes. Yeah, you got the vampires and all that fun stuff. You also got like the androchrome, the idea of like abusing someone to get the adrenaline going and then to consume the blood afterwards, and then in the consumption of the blood that possesses the different adrenalines and enzymes that are secreted during times of trouble, that a high can be achieved from that consumption. So there's a lot of really weird stuff when it comes to the consumption of blood. Some of it might be true, some of it maybe not. Maybe it's an exaggeration, it's hard to say. Verses like this in the Bible I always find quite fascinating, because there's often more than one thing going on at the same time. Yeah, we have the literal banning of these items and for the generations, but there's usually a benefit to the obedience of them. When we look at the Hebrew people, the Israelites, during the Middle Ages, during a lot of the plagues, there was a lot of discrimination against them. And that discrimination was because they didn't get sick and die in the numbers of the people around them. And a lot of the reason why that is because their dietary restrictions prevented them from eating food that would make them sick in many cases, so they wouldn't be affected by the plagues to the same degree as the people around them. So they were blamed for them, and that created a lot of distrust and made people dislike the Hebrew people. So that stuff is quite fascinating. Reading up on this fat consumption thing is something. It looks like there's some more verses later on that kind of spell out some of the details of which fats can be eaten and which ones can't, and how exactly this works out. So it kind of expands upon the ideas that we've seen here. It appears that bird fat is okay for consumption, and sometimes some variants of wild deer meat, it can be eaten as well. So it's quite interesting, actually. Well, I think it's interesting. Maybe it's not actually interesting, but anyway, we'll see. We'll see when we get there, when it's expanded on a little bit more. We're going to have to see what the Bible says when we get to those chapters to truly understand what is going on. Looking at the modern Jewish interpretation of the Old Testament and the modern interpretation of the Jewish dietary restrictions is not really the same as seeing what the text says itself. Studying the Old Testament and looking at some of the dietary restrictions is quite interesting, but as New Testament believers, we are not under the same restrictions as the Israelites were, and don't have to obey these rules when it comes to the consumption of food.